Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Rick and Morty, That's Amorte. And I thought this was a really good episode. It wasn't really funny. There were like bits that were like, okay, that's kind of humorous, but this was a very good exploration of a kind of core, screwed up, messed up kind of escalating situation that we get ourselves into, mainly detailing with Morty and then kind of Rick on the kind of side of it, just kind of being almost an agent of chaos, but yet not being completely out of the realm of trying to be somewhat helpful in his own way. This was a very weird episode, but I kind of have to give it to him to how they kind of handled it. It was a very thought-provoking one and very just strange. That's why the thumbnail looks kind of weird. It's not like, hey, I'm really happy, this is really kind of good. It's like, this is good, but it's deeply disturbing and you have to watch out because there was a trigger warning because of it dealing with suicide and everything, and it gets dark and deep and completely does at least treat its subject matter very seriously, even though it does try and get some humor out of certain things of what's kind of going on. So we've seen the stinger. It's Spaghetti Thursday. Rick going like, yeah, here's this great spaghetti. Everybody's kind of loving it and all that. And Rick's going to get some more of the spaghetti, but Morty walks in on him and he is spooning out the spaghetti from a corpse. And Morty's like, God damn it! And tries to figure out what's kind of going on with this. So then Rick takes him to where he gets the spaghetti. There's this planet where if you kill yourself, your insides turn into spaghetti, giving pretty much like the technical jargon of what kind of goes on. He gets into pretty much a hospital morgue by pretty much just bullshitting how he usually does. He's like, all right, these are the various people, this is how they died, and then getting to the one that killed themselves and seeing that it's spaghetti. And this one dude walks in like, why the fuck are you eating like a person? What the fuck's kind of going on here? And Rick is at first being like, Morty, are we done with this? But then Morty's like, I don't know if I can handle this because once you see behind the curtain, it changes shit. And then he decides that he wants to know their name and then go to the funeral because Rick's like, I'm not doing this funeral shit, but then takes him there. Morty talks about like how he ate him and that it was some of the best spaghetti he's ever fucking eaten and that he's sorry that this person's dead. But however, that then also gets broadcast by phone and then they get back home and then everybody in the family is pissed off at Morty for revealing the fact that the spaghetti is from people that have killed themselves. And I have to give them credit of dealing with this kind of dysfunction of like, you want to do the right thing, but you've taken away something that's given people joy. However, if I learned that, like, it's interesting of all the different kind of stuff that you see with this because it goes into like ethical consumption and everything of food and how your food's made and what you eat and what the effects are of that, and like you can't really separate it out that easily. And they're pissed off that Morty's like, oh yeah, it's people, like Solvent Green kind of shit. But it's like, come on, like there's gotta be ways to create good spaghetti without like going out like dead people and shit. And then the thing is, Morty's like in his room just like, oh, fuck. And then Probe from the planet gets him called in. He is then talking with the president of the planet. And they're like, hey, this dude, they killed themselves so that way they could offer it to you. And he's like, this is really good spaghetti. And they then start essentially creating this whole kind of thing of selling this spaghetti out to the universe. And it's like ethical and everything, comes in a can and all that. And then it's like, what the fuck's kind of going on? They go back to the planet and everything has gone to shit. They've essentially commodified and are pretty much trying to force people to kill themselves to sustain this capitalistic consumption of this thing, of this spaghetti going on. It's like, holy fucking shit. And the thing is, Rick is the only one that realizes it until they get towards the end, because then they start trying to figure out how to make it more ethical. And the thing is, Rick's like, go ahead, Morty, take this one away, because he started in on this whole kind of thing, and it was his kind of interference that kind of led to this. And I gotta hand it to him. Rick and Morty, at least for me, have been working pretty well. I didn't notice any kind of weirdness in their voices, and this is the first one that we get really Morty taking center stage in this. First, we go with the kind of clone route, and they're, of course, fuck this shit, and, like, they kill each other, and then it's like, alright, and then they're trying to make them less kind of people, and suicidal still enough, and Rick goes through all this stuff showing Morty this horrifying stuff, and then we see this, like, legless, limbless, headless kind of torso thing. He's like, can you give him like a claw? And then they essentially make a conveyor belt, and of course it's shitty. It's not as good as the other ones. It's like, oh god, that's fucked up. And then of course it initiates a kind of war between the people of the planet who don't want to be fucking food for people, and then people who want the spaghetti to be better again. And it's just fucked up as they're like fighting each other. The one dude's like telling them to pretty much kill himself to pretty much create the spaghetti. It's fucked up. And then Rick's pretty much like, alright, I can handle this. I can make it so that nobody wants to have this spaghetti again. How about that? And then they pretty much go to the last kind of this terminally ill person who's pretty much writing it out. He doesn't want to be this spaghetti kind of thing, but instead he's like, alright, listen, you will be the last one. Let's do this. As more alien races are trying to get this spaghetti. And then we see that they broadcast his final moments and his whole life, and then showcasing the spaghetti. And it's really kind of, I think that they did a well done job of showcasing his entire life and everything, and that kind of contributes to the whole spaghetti thing. Of course, the limbless thing that doesn't really have a life didn't kind of create it, because that kind of affects what goes on with it. At least that's what I interpreted from it, as then Rick then rips him open after he's died and shows the spaghetti. Everybody starts puking up, and they're like, oh sweet Jesus, as they'd seen this person's life, and that really affects them, because once you know that kind of shit, you can't, I mean, it's very hard to kind of remove that information from your brain. I mean, you'd have to fucking lobotomize yourself to a certain extent to kind of like take that out, and then you're introducing a whole other host of problems for yourself. But that pretty much stops it with them. Rick doesn't give a shit, pretty much being like that death is pretty much the only kind of right answer with life, because of how kind of life consumes things and everything. It's just like, ah, shit. So it's a kind of typical kind of Rick answer to what's kind of going on, though I think we still see kind of his growth throughout this and how he handles this situation, because at first he would like do a power move and probably overcorrect and trying to correct Morty's kind of problem that he's created. However, he's more content with standing back and being like, alright, how do you handle this? And I do like that, because it then gives Morty the chance to optimize what he has learned, even though this is a very hard situation to optimize what he has learned throughout his adventures with Rick, even though he still tries to attempt to do it. And it's just kind of nuts. It's like, oh shit. And then we see that kind of stops out, but then we get at the end, and that we have now introduced Salisbury steak, and Rick's like, don't ask, and because Morty needed help, he pretty much said, I'm not going to look behind the curtain, I'm not going to do anything like that, I'll do whatever you want. And Rick's like, fine, alright. He still uses it as a power move, but he doesn't immediately jump to the power move on the first go-ahead. And then we see the whole kind of Salisbury steak, everybody's enjoying it, and it's like, oh shit, how, like, it's worse than the spaghetti one. I'm like, oh god. It was an interesting look on, like, ethical consumption and what fucked up shit can happen when you try and commodify and reduce people to just a product. And all that kind of shit. It was just like, holy fuck balls, man. It was really good and really got me kind of thinking. We also got a stinger at the end where we see this kind of like group of vacuum people and a group kind of thing. They open it up, and that's where vacuum bags come from, as they're like spooting out dust and vomiting. It's like, okay, interesting cold and their stinger thing. Alright. And then we got a kind of tease for the next episode that's like, there's so many spoilers, we're not spoiling anything. It's like, alright, good. So, this one's definitely a hard one. If you are sensitive to suicide and everything, this is definitely going to be a harder kind of episode to do, so I wouldn't completely recommend it on that front. It's not a very funny one, though there can be humor. I've seen, like, the ones that want the spaghetti back and the ones that are like, stop using this as spaghetti as they're fighting each other. But it was still entertaining and thought-provoking for me, so that's why I'm pretty much like, yeah, this was a good episode, even though it's like, holy shit, the subject matter was like some dark, fucked up, messed up shit. I wasn't expecting it to be like, wham, and like, crack the shit out of me when I was watching it last night. It was nuts. But I think they handled it pretty well. They did not treat it lightly. Even though there was jokes and humor that they tried to glean from it, it wasn't done in... They understood what they were trying to kind of do here, at least in my opinion. If you agree with that, cool. If you disagree with that, that's quite alright. I could definitely understand why this one wouldn't be for people and be like, hey, this one fucking sucks. I'm like, I get that. I understand that. For me, though, I think they worked it really well. So, those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.